I'm 73 years old. My name is Peter Whitemore, and I'm going to say something that might irritate you, confuse you, or maybe even offend you a little. Problems don't exist. It took me more than 52 years to realize what I'm about to tell you. 52 years of worrying, 52 years of overthinking, 52 years of losing sleep, grinding my teeth, chasing answers, blaming people, blaming myself, and calling things problems. And now I can explain it to you in about 14 minutes. When I was young, I thought life was a series of problems to solve. Money was a problem. Relationships were problems. My boss was a problem. My weight was a problem. My doubts were a problem. The economy was a problem. My past was a problem. My future was a problem. I carried problems the way some people carry wallets, always on me, always within reach. If something didn't go my way, it was a problem. If someone disagreed with me, it was a problem. If I felt fear, that was a problem too. I thought adulthood meant becoming better at solving problems, and I became very good at solving them. Or at least, I thought I did. But here's what I didn't notice. Every time I solved one problem, another one appeared. Sometimes bigger, sometimes smaller, but always another. I fixed my finances. Then I worried about losing my finances. I found love. Then I worried about losing love. I built success. Then I worried about maintaining success. The problems multiplied. One day in my early 20s, I remember thinking, when I finally get everything sorted out, then I'll relax. That sentence haunted me for decades. Because everything was never sorted out. Life kept moving. There was always something unfinished. And I called that unfinished feeling a problem. Let me tell you what changed everything for me. I was in my early 50s, old enough to have lived, young enough to still be restless. I had achieved some of the goals I once thought would finally make me peaceful, and yet I had fewer external problems than ever before. And yet internally the tension was still there. That's when I began to ask a different question. What if the problem isn't the problem? What if the problem is what I'm calling a problem? Think about that. A situation happens. You lose a job. Someone criticizes you. You get sick. A plan falls apart. Is that a problem, or is it an event? For 52 years, I never separated the two. An event happened. I labeled it problem. And once I labeled it that way, my body reacted. My heart rate changed. My thoughts accelerated. Fear showed up. Anger showed up. Urgency showed up. But here's what I began to see. The event and the label are not the same thing. An event is neutral. It's just something that happened. The meaning I attach to it, that's where the problem is born. If it rains on the day of your picnic, is that a problem? To you, maybe. To a farmer in a drought, it's a blessing. The same rain, two completely different realities. So what changed? Not the rain, the interpretation. For most of my life, I thought reality was happening to me. But I slowly began to realize that my experience of reality was being filtered through my interpretations. And those interpretations were often automatic, inherited, conditioned, fear-based. I wasn't responding to life. I was responding to my thoughts about life. And that's when it hit me. Problems don't exist in the way we think they do. There are circumstances, there are challenges, there are pains, there are losses. But a problem is a story layered on top of those things. When my business struggled in my 40s, I told myself, this is a disaster. This could ruin everything. I failed. That story created anxiety, shame, sleepless nights. Years later, looking back, I could see that period as one of the most formative times of my life. It forced me to grow. It forced me to simplify. It forced me to become more creative. The event didn't change. My perspective did. And that perspective changed everything. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying pain isn't real. I'm not saying loss isn't real. I've buried people I loved. I've felt grief so heavy, I thought it would crush my chest. I've made mistakes that cost me dearly. Those experiences are real. But here's what I discovered. Suffering increases when we argue with reality. When something happens and we say this shouldn't be happening, we create resistance. And that resistance is what we experience as a problem. Reality is what is. A problem is what we think should not be. That gap between what is and what we think should be, that's where most of our misery lives. For decades, I lived in that gap. If traffic was slow, I thought it shouldn't be. If someone disagreed with me, they shouldn't. If I felt anxious, I shouldn't. If I aged, I shouldn't. I was constantly negotiating with reality, and I was losing every time, because reality doesn't negotiate. It simply unfolds. The moment I began experimenting with acceptance, not passive resignation, but clear acceptance, something extraordinary happened. When a situation arose, instead of immediately labeling it a problem, I asked myself, what is this asking of me? That question shifted everything. Instead of fighting the situation, I became curious about it. Curiosity dissolves problems. When you're curious, you're not a victim. You're an explorer. If I lost money, instead of, this is a problem, I asked, what is this teaching me about risk, about trust, about planning? If a relationship ended, instead of this is a disaster, I asked, what did I ignore? What did I learn? How did I grow? The event remained, the suffering softened. And here is the most liberating realization of all. Life is not happening against you. It's happening, that's it. For so long, I personalized everything. If someone was rude, I thought it was about me. If an opportunity disappeared, I thought I was being punished. If I failed, I thought I was fundamentally flawed. But as the years passed, I saw how little control I truly had over the grand flow of things. Economies shift, people change, bodies age, markets fluctuate, weather moves, time marches. So much of what I called my problems was simply life moving. A tree doesn't call winter a problem. It doesn't panic when its leaves fall. It doesn't accuse the sky. It adapts. Somehow, we humans decided that life should conform to our preferences, and when it doesn't, we declare a problem. At 73, I can tell you this. Most of what you're calling a problem today will either resolve itself, transform you, or become irrelevant. I have journals from decades ago. I sometimes flip through them. I read pages filled with anxiety about things I can barely remember now. I wrote about conversations that kept me up at night, deals I thought would make or break me, opinions that felt catastrophic. None of them define my life today, not one, and that realization is humbling. We spend so much energy fighting battles that time will erase. Now, does that mean you sit back and do nothing? Of course not. Acceptance is not passivity. When something needs action, you act. If your house is on fire, you don't say problems don't exist and sit in a chair. You move. But you move without panic, without self-torture, without the added layer of, this shouldn't be happening to me. You respond to the situation instead of dramatizing it. That's the difference. For 52 years, I dramatized. I told myself stories about how unfair, how terrible, how permanent things were. And in doing so, I magnified them. Here's something else I learned late in life. The mind loves problems because problems create identity. If you have a problem, you have a role. The struggler, the victim, the hero, the fixer, the survivor. Problems can become part of who we think we are, and letting go of problems can feel like losing a piece of ourselves. I didn't realize how attached I was to my struggles until they began to fade. There was a strange emptiness at first. If I'm not battling something, who am I? But in that space, something quieter emerged. Peace, not the kind that comes from controlling everything, the kind that comes from not needing to. At 73, I still face challenges. My body reminds me daily that time is undefeated. Friends fall ill. The world feels unpredictable. Technology moves faster than I do. But I no longer call these problems. They are conditions of being alive. There's enormous freedom in that. When you stop demanding that life be smooth, you stop being shocked when it isn't. And when you stop being shocked, you stop suffering unnecessarily. I wish I had understood this at 21. Or I could have saved myself years of tension. But perhaps I needed those years to see clearly. So here's what I want to leave you with. The next time you say, I have a problem, pause. Ask yourself, what actually happened? Strip away the story. Describe the event as if you were a camera, not a commentator. Then ask, what meaning am I adding? Is that meaning absolutely true? Or is it a prediction, a fear, a memory of something else? And finally, ask, what is within my control right now? Usually, it's one small step. Make the call, have the conversation, adjust the plan, rest, learn, let go. The rest, the dramatic storyline, let it dissolve. Life is far too short to spend it arguing with what already is. At 73, I don't see a life full of problems behind me. I see a life full of moments, some sweet, some bitter, all instructive. The so-called problems shaped me, they humbled me, they redirected me, but they were never enemies. They were invitations. Invitations to grow up, invitations to release control, invitations to trust that not everything needs to be labeled, fixed, or feared. If I could sit across from my younger self, the anxious one who believed everything was urgent and fragile, I would say this: relax, you are not behind. You are not cursed. You are not uniquely burdened. You are alive, and being alive means constant change. Change is not a problem, it's the nature of existence. It took me 52 years to realize that the word problem was often just a mask for resistance. Once I stopped resisting so fiercely, life became lighter, not easier, lighter. And lighter is enough. So if you remember nothing else from these 14 minutes, remember this: events are real. Pain can be real, but the word problem is powerful. Use it carefully, because once you label something a problem, your body prepares for battle. And not everything is a battle. Sometimes it's just a season. Sometimes it's just a lesson. Sometimes it's just life. I'm 73, and I can tell you with calm certainty, the fewer problems you believe in, the freer you become.